everyone, welcome to another video. Today I want to show you how we can leverage managed identities with our Managed DevOps Pools to securely access Azure resources. The big advantage of using identities is that we don't have to store any secrets in our code, and we can leverage the built-in functionality of Azure. Of course, we could also use Azure Service Connections, but with this feature we can tie the identity directly to our Managed DevOps Pool. So let's take a look at what we're going to do today. First, we're going to create a managed identity. Then we're going to create an Azure Key Vault. And with both created, we're going to configure the access of the managed identity to the Key Vault. We're going to give the identity permissions to read and write secrets. After this, we're going to deploy a new Managed DevOps Pool, and we're going to attach this managed identity to the DevOps Pool. In the end, we're going to test the whole setup with a pipeline that's going to write a secret into the Key Vault and then read the secret again. And all of this with the identity. So with this said, let's jump into the terminal and let's start deploying our services. To get started, let's define a couple of variables. First, we're going to define the name for the resource group, a location, and we query the subscription ID. Then we're going to define the variables for our DevOps pool. That's the pool name, then the name for the Dev Center, and the name for our Dev Center project. And lastly, we're going to create the name for our managed identity and the name for the Key Vault. What's important, that the name for the Key Vault has to be unique worldwide. So if you try out the demo yourself, you have to change the name. As always, I'll provide a link to the GitHub where you can find all the files, all the code from today in the description down below. With the variables defined, let's get started creating our resources. First, we're going to create a resource group, and this resource group is going to contain all the resources we are creating today. Next up, we are going to create the managed identity. So we use AC identity create. Then we provide the name and the resource group. And in the end, we also query the ID of the managed identity. We're doing this because we need the ID to assign the role for the Key Vault in a later step. Before I can do this, we have to create the Key Vault. That's also very simple. AC Key Vault create with the resource group, the Key Vault name, the location, and then we enable the RBAC authorization, and this will allow us to use Azure RBAC to access the Key Vault. This should only take a moment, and after the Key Vault is created, we're going to assign a role to the managed identity so the managed identity can access the Key Vault. There we have it, the Key Vault is created. Let's clean up this window. And now we are going to assign the Key Vault Secrets Officer role to the managed identity. This role can write and read secrets. The assignee here is the ID of the managed identity, the one we queried before, and the scope is our Key Vault. So if you follow the demo, you don't have to change anything. You can just paste this command and it will work. It should only take a couple seconds, and then the role is assigned to our managed identity. That's already everything we have to set up. Now we can already get started creating our Managed DevOps Pool. I will link you a video in the description down below about all the detailed steps how to create a Managed DevOps Pool. Today I'm going just quickly over it. So first we are going to create a Dev Center. The Dev Center is responsible to manage all the infrastructure. This means if we want to create a new agent or DevOps pool, the Dev Center takes care of all the resources we need for it. Creating this should only take 1 to 2 minutes. And I'm going to stop the video here until it's finished, and then we're going to continue. With the Dev Center created, we can now create a project inside this Dev Center. This again will take 2 to 3 minutes. And after this project is created, we can create our Managed DevOps Pool. With the Dev Center project created, we can now deploy our Managed DevOps Pool. So let's clean up this window and deploy the Managed DevOps Pool. What's interesting here is probably the last 4 files because they configure the Managed DevOps pool. As I said before, I have a video explaining everything in detail, so take a look at this. But while the deployment is running, let's take a quick look at all the files and especially at the last, the identity one. The first one, the agent profile file, configures the agent. You can either say you want to have a stateless agent. This means every time a pipeline or job finishes, the agent is removed. And if you start a new pipeline or have multiple jobs in a pipeline, then every time a new agent is created. In my next video, I'm going to show you how to use stateful agents to optimize the performance of your pipelines. But for now, we're just going to use stateless because it's simpler. Next, we have the organization profile. There you have everything about your organization. For example, the URL to your Azure DevOps server. So if you're using my files, you have to change the URL to the URL of your server. Then you can configure which project should be able to use this Managed DevOps pool. In this case, I'm using the DevOps pool for all projects. And on the bottom, you can configure the permissions. In this case, I'm the only one who is allowed to manage this DevOps pool because I'm the creator. But you could also say everyone with the permissions in Azure DevOps can manage it. Next up, we have the Fabric profile. Here we configure everything about our agent, for example, the VM, then what operating system we use, in this case Ubuntu 22.04, and further down we can say we're using an SSD for our VM. Lastly, the most interesting file for today is the identity, and there we configure the identity we want to use for our Managed DevOps pool. So on top, we say it's a user-assigned identity, and on bottom here, we add the ID of our identity. This means we have here our subscription ID. So if you follow this demo, you also have to update this ID because your subscription is going to be different. And if you use the same names I've been using for the resource group and managed identity, then you don't have to change anything. If you change the names, then you also have to update them here. So in the meantime, the Managed DevOps pool should have been finished with the deployment. So let's switch over to the terminal and take a look. Yes, the Managed DevOps pool is deployed. And now we can switch over to Azure DevOps and run our pipeline and test the implementation. Here in Azure DevOps, I've already prepared a pipeline. You will also have the pipeline in the GitHub. For now, let's run the pipeline. And while the pipeline runs, let's take a look at the implementation. So let's run this one. The first time you're using your Managed DevOps pool, you also have to grant permissions. So if you click on the job, you will see here this message that the pipeline needs a permission before I can run. So you just permit it. This is something you only have to do the first time you use a new agent pool. So while this is running, let's take a look at our pipeline. Let's zoom in a little bit. Here on top of the pipeline, we're using our Managed DevOps pool. This means if you change the name during the deployment, you also have to update the name here. And you also have to update the name of the Key Vault. As I said before, the Key Vault has to be unique worldwide. This means you have to use your Key Vault name there. Next up, I'm going to use PowerShell to write the secret into the Key Vault. And in the next step, we're using again PowerShell and the Azure CLI to read the secret. What's interesting and important here is the first time I'm using a command, I use the AC login command with the identity flag. And this instructs the Managed DevOps pool to use the identity it has assigned to log in. And for all the other commands we're using, it's using this identity. So we logged in, and in the next step here, we use the Azure Key Vault secret set command. This means we write a secret, and this is possible because the identity has access to our key vault. Then we provide the name of the key vault, the name of the secret, and what's important here is the value of the secret. I'm saying this is important because we're going to read the secret, and in the end, we should see the same value again. So after writing the secret, we are going to read the secret now. And what's important here is we don't need a login again because we are already logged in. So we don't have to do it again. Here we're using the Azure CLI again to read the secret, and then we are querying the value. This value is stored in a variable, and this variable is written into a text file. The reason why I'm doing this is because Azure DevOps knows that this is a secret, and if I just want to print it to the output, it will mask it, so I can't see it. I will only see asterisk, and I want to see what the value is. Therefore, if I write it into secret txt, then I can read it. Lastly, I'm publishing this secrets file. So down here, we're going to have a container that's named secrets, and inside this container, we'll have our txt file. With this said, let's move back to our pipeline. Let's see if it's already finished and if we could read and write our secret. The pipeline is finished. It also ran successfully. And there we can see we have one published file. If you open this, then we can download the secret.txt file, and there we should see our value. Exactly. Here we have, this is a secret value. That's what we wrote into the secret. And this proves that we could use the identity of our Managed DevOps pool to log in, to access the key vault, write a new secret, and then read the secret without having to log in again. This is everything I wanted to show you today. So Managed DevOps Pools is, in my opinion, one of the greatest services we have on Azure right now. It makes the management of our agents so much easier. And with the identity feature, we also can securely access all the resources we need to access. And it's also very easy to manage, and as we have seen, to set up. I said it before, in my next video, I'm going to show you how we can use stateful agents. This will allow us to speed up the creation and the usage of agents in our pipeline immensely. And if you're interested in more topics like Azure DevOps, Azure, and security, subscribe to the channel. Let me know if you have any questions or ideas for new videos. And I hope to see you next week for another video.